I'd like to tribute this video, okay? I'd like to tribute this video for anybody, for anyone who loves the lore of Hollow Knight and has been disappointed so far with my lack of understanding with it. This video is for you specifically. I'm going to dedicate 100% brain power to this, okay? 100% brain power. I'm going to try not to miss anything. Here we go. Will there be a quiz at the end? Sure. If you guys want to come up with 5 questions, sure. Dial in. Let me know how the volume is too, by the way, as well. Okay.
If you were to ask me, what is your favorite video game ever made? I would have to say Cory in the House for the Nintendo DS. But Hollow Knight would be a close
That was on the
second.
tip of my tongue.
Hollow Knight was released on February 24th, 2017 by Team Cherry, an indie game studio based in the mythical land of Adelaide, South Australia. Over the past 3 years, Hollow Knight has become an indie darling. The game has sold over 3.5 million copies. It was the opening game at ADGQ 2019.
Oh, really?
A Hollow Knight book, a line of plushies.
Yo, by the way,
t-shirt.
Okay, sorry. By the way, but GDQ is going on right now, I think, as well. And I've been watching that all the time as I'm editing.
Nicotine patches, nuclear warheads, and even vinyl
Nicotine
records for all you
patches.
goddamn hipsters. Team Cherry had one goal when making Hollow Knight. They wanted to create a world that allowed players to get completely lost in exploration. We can see this.
That never happened to me. Luckily, I never got completely lost. Right, everybody? Right, everyone? That never happened to me.
Desire in Hollow Knight's design. The levels in Hollow Knight are massive, with secrets and rewards hidden in every nook and cranny. Be that powerful charms, special abilities, or, the game's navigation system requires the player.
Wait, that's a good point. That was a great point. And let me tell you why. What the H do we use rancid eggs for? I have 19 of those MFers. I'm being serious. Guys, am I going to find out? Am I going to find out what happens with the rancid eggs or whatever?
Player to work for their map, forcing them to make a stronger mental image of the world in their head.
W. Cornifer.
Christopher Larkin's score and Ari Gibson's artwork lend to this as well, creating an atmosphere that the player won't want to leave. But there's one aspect of Hollow Knight that keeps people like me coming back. The world building.
Okay, hang on. Guys, just be ready for a pause-a-palooza. If you guys are gonna get upset at pauses, just go watch the video on your own. But the Hollow Knight does set an incredible ambience, and when like the first time that I was playing the game when we were 6 hours in and I was playing the game and we got to Green Path and the music was going and like the ambience was setting and everything, I was like, I don't want to stop playing this game because the ambience, the setting of the ambience was so good. I was like, I'm really hungry right now and I don't want to stop playing because like this just feels like the game felt really good.
When Super Metroid launched in 1994, it stood out for its amazing sense of immersion. Now in 1994, I was busy not being alive, but I've watched enough YouTube video essays to know that this game was a big deal. In case you didn't know, Super Metroid is basically the granddaddy of all Metroidvanias. That's why they're called Metroidvanias.
Oh, okay.
Now in Super Metroid, there are moments that give they're called Super video essays to know that this game was a big deal.
Oh, okay. So
That's
it comes
why
from
they're
this
called
game.
Depth.
Okay.
Basically the feeling that this world exists outside of Samus's interactions with it. In the room right before that diabetic crocodile thing, Samus can find the corpse of a random soldier. His inclusion here doesn't change the gameplay at all, but instead gives the player a sense of wonder about the world they are exploring. Who was this guy? Why was he here in the first place? Did he like jazz? Now, finding dead bodies and other random garbage is pretty cool, right? Well, Hollow Knight basically does the same thing, about a dozen times. Through its world building, Hollow Knight turns Hallownest into a living kingdom.
Okay.
You can sense.
I don't know why, but that picture, that shot of Scrimbio just silently looking down without moving at that dead body floating in the water. That was like, okay, honestly, 07. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. 07 for whatever that thing was in the water. That the one of the Watcher Knights, I think.
The ancient history of the land when you look at dilapidated structures or giant barred doors. Nothing feels like it was put into the game randomly. There's a reason for it all. Except those reasons aren't the easiest to uncover.
What is this? Did I see this? Guys, did I see this? Yes or no? Oh wait, there's oh never mind. I had to have because I got never mind. I got all the grubs. There's a grub right here. When Mima religion? No, Tower of Love. How did I not see this? I got all the Mimas. It's in the Collector's Tower. Tower of Love.
Hollow Knight's narrative is buried under layers of NPC dialogue, item descriptions, lore tablets, and even additional content like the Quarrel comic and Fangamer's Wanderer's Journal. These past 3 years have seen an insane amount of research
that looks
by
sick.
Fangamer's
Hold up.
Wanderer's Journal.
This looks sick. Who made this? This looks really cool.
These past 3 years have seen an insane amount of research by the Hollow Knight community to make sense of Team Cherry's sprawling world.
Oh, wait, what?
Research by the Hollow Knight community to make sense of Team Cherry's sprawling world. We've even made it to the point where people are
If that doesn't prove that I'm 100% paying attention, I don't know what will.
looking at the in-game signs to try and decipher Hallownest's logographic language. In this video, I hope to give you a long and detailed look into the world of Hollow Knight, exploring Hallownest's history and uncertain future. When I'm not busy making surprisingly accurate Super Smash Bros. Roster speculation videos, or insightful podcasts about beloved subjects like the Donkey Kong Country television series,
Bro,
or whatever this was.
If this isn't, this is so relatable. This is so relatable. Because like, you're like, these are the videos that he probably wants to make. Whoever this content creator is. And like, this is just so relatable.
Supposed to be, I'm usually making videos about Hollow Knight. And while I am a seasoned Hollow Knight lore expert, I cannot confirm that every musing or theory presented in this video is completely correct. I highly recommend checking out the lore section of the Hollow Knight wiki if you want a more neutral explanation of Hollow Knight's lore. But if you're too lazy to read, then I suggest you sit back, order some Domino's pizza, or just grab a block of cheese from the fridge, and enjoy the mostly complete lore of Hollow Knight.
That sounds pretty good right now.
It's a simple fact of
What? I'm gonna start from here. Okay? Sans, of course. Man, it's really snowing out there, huh? Yowza, Bazinga, how you doing? Did I do that? Lucy, you got some explaining to do. Man, it's really snowing. Oh, wait, never mind. What voice do you want? I can't do the collector. I'll refund your points. I can't do the collector. Report. Man, it's really snowing out there, huh? Yowza, Bazinga, how you doing? Did I do that? Lucy, you got some explaining to do. Hang on. No, you have to pick. I can't pick. You pick and then highlight your message or just don't highlight your message, just let me know.
Be that technology, ideologies, or in rare cases, God. As it turns out, the bugs in
As I said, I don't know if you guys heard this, as I said, these pictures, these random pictures with like Nazism or whatever the hell this is on the screen are keeping me like fully engaged.
Hallownest pretty much operate in the same way.
Okay, all right, here's what I've learned in the video so far. I've learned that I'm about to learn what the lore is. I've learned one of two things. Number one, I'm lazy. Isn't that right, Pep? Well, Sans. Yes, I believe that is true. And number two, I've learned so far in the video that I'm about to learn what it is about the lore. There's several different gods that people worship, and I'm about to learn what each of those gods mean. That's what I've learned. Okay, here we go.
From the Mosskin born from the dream of a giant slug, to the emo kids of the ancient civilization who literally worship the darkness, there is no shortage of things to worship in the world of Hollow Knight. Our story begins with a creature very much worthy of worship. A creature born from the carcass of a worm. The carcass can still be found in the Kingdom's Edge, and it's our only good look at what worms actually looked like. At the time Hollow Knight occurs, it is suggested there are no worms left in the world. They were incredibly long creatures that featured little to no limbs. Another more mysterious property of worms was that they had some kind of prescience or foresight. Basically, they could see the future to some capacity. It isn't clear how effective this ability was. Considering how the entire race went extinct, this foresight ability must have been pretty shit. Getting back to this particular worm carcass, it is explained that this worm traveled across the distant mountains and wastelands beyond Hallownest. Once it arrived in Hallownest, the worm died. Except not really. Inside the maw of the carcass sits a pale broken egg, out of which hatched a new form of worm, a being of meager shell. This form of the worm is usually referred to as the Pale King, and he's the character basically responsible for everything that happens in Hollow Knight. The Pale King is a higher being, a type.
Guys, I have two questions so far. Number one, where was that worm carcass? I don't remember seeing that worm carcass. The only with that much wind, the only place I remember with that much wind was the place that we couldn't go to. The place that I always kept trying to walk to, but we never got there. Number two, the Pale King is responsible for everything? Everything?
Type of creature that exists above all others. His body was said to shine with a radiant visage that harmed those who looked upon him. The ultimate goal of the Pale King seemed to be in line with that of other worms. A line from the cryptic mystic.
Okay, I'm just letting you guys know. I read your after the hornet fight. Okay, got it.
Mushroom reads, "Worms pull bugs into their thrall, till ages pass and kingdoms fall." In other words, it's just in their nature. Dogs wag their tails.
That's what I need! That's what I need! You guys don't understand! You guys don't understand! You guys all have IQs of like minimum 120. You guys read biblical talk and you're like, yes, of course. Trevor, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Trevor, on this biblical talk? I don't effing know. I don't know. Like this one, I need something like this where we read.
Reads, "Worms pull bugs into their thrall, till ages pass and kingdoms fall."
Yes, yes. What are your thoughts, Trevor? Worms pull bugs into their thrall till ages pass and kingdoms fall. Yes. Can we get some Trevor deductions on that? I need someone to say this to me.
In other words, it's just in their nature.
It's just in their nature.
Dogs
oh, okay, great. Good to know. You know what I mean?
Wag their tails, cats bury their shit,
Oh.
and worms bring massive amounts of bugs.
That was such a cute picture for such an aggressive line, by the way.
Into their service in order to form long-standing kingdoms and civilizations. And here in a far corner of the world, the Pale King emerged from the corpse of his former self and began to build his eternal kingdom, Hallownest. There's this one slight problem. There's like people already living there. The area that would eventually become Hallownest was already filled with—
Yo, this looks so good. I'm assuming this is fan art, right? God, I love fan art. I'm jealous of people that are good artists. This is so good. This looks so amazing. This looks so good. And by the way, I'd like to defend the fact that my reading comprehension isn't very high. I'm a physics major, okay? I'm not an English major. I don't know English, okay? Let it be known, by the way.
With mantises, bees, moths, spiders, mushrooms, and bush cosmos.
Wait, does anyone know who this is? Does anybody know who this is? You guys are probably too young for this, honestly. Do you guys know who this is? Spoderman. Spoderman, yeah. Oh my god. Bro, this just like awakened a memory that I did not know that I had. Oh my god.
Players. Each of these groups were already operating with their own cultures and societies, and each group had a different interaction with the Pale King. One of the more receptive groups to the arrival of the Pale King were the mushrooms of the fungal wastes. These creatures were able to communicate with one another through one shared mind. The mushrooms viewed this shared mind as a strength, and they were kind of smug dickheads about it. Ultimately, the mushrooms wearily accepted—
As I was saying, this video is incredible so far, and I'm not joking. Everything that I've been thinking, this guy is eloquently putting into words. Those MFers that just bash their head into the floor? Chimp those MFers.
Pale King's rule, viewing his foresight as a shield to the dangers of the future. Another group living in the fungal—
By the way, I remember seeing that giant mushroom. I don't remember what it said. Hang on, 1 second.
Heads about it. Ultimately, the mushrooms wearily accepted the Pale King's rule, viewing his foresight as a shield to the dangers of the future.
Okay.
Another group living in the fungal wastes is the Mantis tribe. The Mantises have a rich cultural history reaching back to long before the birth of Hallownest. The Mantises are a proud tribe, believing in the importance of proving one's physical strength. The Mantises are fiercely territorial, but will show respect to those who display great power.
Here's what I will say. when I was but a mere noob at this game, when I had almost no skill at all, I hated the mantises because they were super annoying. But as soon as I beat the mantis lords and they started bowing and respecting power, giving me the respect I deserve, that's when I loved them. That's when I loved them, by the way. Here we go.
These Fight Club enthusiasts were led by 4 powerful mantis lords, who I guess just kind of sat around waiting for outsiders to challenge them.
Wait, did he just say 4?
Who I guess these Fight Club enthusiasts were led by 4 powerful mantis lords, who I guess just kind of sat around waiting for outsiders to challenge them. The mantis tribe had no interest in the Pale King's kingdom, but the 2 communities did come to a truce. In exchange for their independence from Hallownest, the mantis tribe kept the beasts of Deep Nest from invading Hallownest. Not sure why they didn't just go out the other exits from Deep Nest, but whatever. I'm not an expert on border patrol. I don't work at ICE anymore. Let's move on to Deep Nest.
Jesus.
Now, many of the different tribes of Hallownest were kind enough to leave lore tablets behind, detailing pretty much everything we need to know about them. Unfortunately, the bugs of Deep Nest didn't do that. We know that the spiders of Deep Nest had a monarchy because why not? Those are always good, right? Also, within Deep Nest are separate groups. Why not? Those are always...
Insert topical reference to latest scandal involving the royal family here.
Good, right?
Okay.
Also, within Deep Nest are a separate group of spiders that immigrated to Deep Nest at some point in the past. This group was known as the Weavers, and they established their own culture and history within Deep Nest. They used looms of silk to...
Okay, I have a question for you guys. Do you remember when we actually went into this room, the Weaver's room, and we got the Weaver child charm, like where it spawns the Weaver children or whatever. And I was like, oh gosh, is that it? Is that it? That's all there is? And as we were leaving, one of these things right here came to life and then ran out the door. But we never saw them again. I was assuming that there was going to be a boss fight or that we would see them later, but we never did. So I'm wondering where, like, what's happening with that?
And they established their own culture and history within Deep Nest.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
They used looms of silk to weave stories, spells, and shields. One thing we know for sure about Deep Nest is that they really didn't want anything to do with Hallownest. The struggles of Deep Nest-Hallownest relations would become painfully clear as time goes on, but for right now, it seems like the two remained fairly isolated from one another. Another section of pre-Hallownest includes Green Path. Now, as far as we can tell, the mushrooms, mantises, and spiders of Deep Nest didn't worship any higher beings. There is this giant mushroom corpse in the fungal core, but I don't think this is a higher being. I mean, who the hell would want to worship a fat-ass mushroom? Fat-ass slugs? Now that's dope. The land we know as Green Path was created by the fat-ass slugs.
How was I? What is this? How was I supposed to see this? I never saw it because oh no, I remember this. I remember this. When I didn't leave it. I came down here and I saw there was a charm that I had to pick up. I picked up the charm, but I never saw this. Guys, I was playing the game normally and just and somehow missed this. This is the cutscene you guys were talking about. How did I miss this though? You left before he showed up? You went past and left. Why would they code it into the game, though, where the cutscene just doesn't auto-play when you cross the territory? Like, how was I... Why was I supposed to think... Not even how. Why was I supposed to think I need to collect the charm and then go back into this area for some reason? That doesn't... That's not very intuitive. Maybe that's me being clueless. Okay. Maybe that's me being clueless, but that didn't seem very intuitive.
Now that's dope. The land we know as Green Path was created by the higher being known as Un. Un used her great mind.
Hang on, sorry, hang on.
Was created by the higher being known as slugs. Now that's dope. The land we know as Green Path was created by the higher being known as Un.
Okay.
Un used her great mind to dream the vegetation of Green Path into the once barren caverns. Un's followers, the Mosskin, were also born out of Un's dream, making her their creator. Green Path at its height was actually much larger than we see in game. At one point, Green Path stretched into both modern-day Queen's Garden and possibly Fog Canyon. Green Path's citizens showed themselves to be a fairly developed society. They built a temple at the Lake of Un in order to worship her, and they even had their own line of defense, with Moss Knights showing proficiency in combat.
Proficiency. Moss Knights showing proficiency. I think we all know who the real proficient nail master is in all of Harrownet. I think we all know. Proficiency, I don't know if I would say that.
Shells as weapons. The Law of Un continued to remain in effect even after the Pale King arrived, but it seems like they allowed the king to establish a road through their lands, leading travelers to the heart of Hallownest. Hence the name Green Path. Yeah, Team Cherry really racked their brains when naming this area, didn't they? Next, we have the bees. And while there is no lore on how these bees can turn into fucking drills, or how they can ignore all known laws of aviation, we do know how they reacted to the Pale King. These bugs
Bro, that is so true. This area, being inside the hive without the hive blood thing, it was just the most ruthless place to be. I hated that area so much.
I had to seal their hive off from the rest of the world, with only patrol bees being able to enter and exit the hive. So yeah, the bees are pretty much pointless in this story. And finally we have the moth tribe. In-game, the only moth...
Bro, by the way, him saying the bees are pretty much useless in the story, I swear to God I heard like, oh, the hive, Trevor, the lore.
Is in the resting grounds. But the tribe might have also inhabited the Crystal Peak at one point. Now as we all know, moths in real life are just complete assholes. As for the moths in Hollow Knight...
How?
Well, it's a bit complicated. The moth race is described as being a rather pacifist group, with few ever choosing to take up
pacifist, by the way? Does anybody get that reference? Does anyone get that reference, pacifist? I can explain it to you guys if you need me to.
A weapon. During the Pale King's reign, the moth race delved amongst dreams and the dead, displaying the importance of remembering those who have passed, as well as learning how to shape dreams themselves. Similar to the Mothskin, the moth tribe was born from a higher being, known as the Radiance. The Radiance is described as being a light in which the moth tribe basked, so she was basically a giant lamp to them. Another important aspect about the Radiance is her ties to dreams and a substance known as essence. Essence are the remains of wishes and dreams, and are represented in-game by these dream catcher particle effects. Essence can take the form of whispering roots, as well as dream ghosts, both of which are memories taking root in the world. The Radiance appears to be a creature made of essence, but she isn't the only higher being to give off essence. Un has green particles, the Pale King has gray particles, and this sexy character named Grim gives off fiery red particles. However,
yes, I would describe Grim as a sexy character as well. Me being, listen, I have the child, and by the way, it takes two. It takes two to have a child, okay? Let me tell you that. It takes two. And one of us is the father, one of us is the mother. But nonetheless, it's our child. So, sexy individual, I may just have to agree with that.
The Radiance appears to be the main god when it comes to dreams. Even if
wait, I have a question, by the way, guys. I have a question. Sorry, I have a question. I forgot that I had a question. What did he say that the essence particles was? The essence particles came from Radiance? Is that what did I hear that correctly? Essence is... dream essence is like particles from Radiance? Is that what I heard? No? Oh, dreams and wishes. Okay, dreams and wishes. Okay.
Also dabble.
Oh, so that's why each territory has its own essence. Is the dreams and wishes from the Radiance individuals are the things that we collect. The dreams and wishes from the Lake of Un area, so Green Path and everything is like the floating particles. The dreams and wishes from Grim are the red stuff, right? Is that correct? Yeah, Radiance is made of essence. That's not correct? I'm about to watch it again. I'm about to watch that section again then. Okay, hold up. Let me watch it again.
Creatures, both essence can take the form of whispering roots, as well.
Wait.
Essence are the remains of wishes and dreams, and are represented in-game by these dream catcher particle effects. Essence can take the form of whispering roots, as well as dream ghosts, both of which are memories taking root in the world. The Radiance appears to be a creature made of essence, but she isn't the only higher being to give off essence. Un has green particles, the Pale King has gray particles, and this sexy character named Grim gives off fiery red particles. However, the Radiance appears to be the main god when it comes to dreams, even if other gods also dabble in the dream realm. Getting back to the Moth tribe, it is their interaction with the Pale King that we need to discuss. Basically, the moths turned their backs on the Radiance completely in order to worship the new light that had appeared, the Pale King's light. So yeah, moths are assholes in this game too. With her tribe forsaking her, the Radiance became a forgotten memory, a remnant of the past, and a thing that's definitely not going to come up again later in this video. And so the Pale King's new kingdom was established, Hallownest. But there is one aspect of Hallownest that we need to discuss. Unfortunately, to better understand this, we're going to have to read some poetry.
Oh!
In Wilds Beyond, they
Poetry
speak your
jump
name
scare.
with reverence and regret. For none could tame our savage souls, yet you the challenge met. Under palest watch you taught, we changed. Base instincts were redeemed. A world you gave to bug and beast as they had never dreamed.
If the next thing out of this guy's mouth is not saying so basically this means blank.
This is from a poem titled Elegy for Hallownest.
Thank God.
Written by Modemon the Teacher. The poem appears at the beginning of every playthrough, and hints at what the Pale King and his kingdom offered. Much of the land outside of Hallownest appears to be a wasteland, where bugs survive off of instinct, without the burden of mind. Hallownest somehow taught these bugs and tamed their savagery. Basically, the Pale King changed the instincts of his subjects and granted them higher thought. To get a better picture of this, let's look at two different characters, Boone and Tuck. These adorable panda bug things give us a clear display of Hallownest's effect. While both appear to be the same spug.
By the way, I would just want to defend when I used to call these children, but these 100%, I think I said this before, but 100% these look like little baby eggs with binkies in their mouth. Or whatever, the pacifiers.
Characters, Boone and
Spitting
Tuck.
image.
These adorable panda bug things give us a clear display of Hallownest's effect. While both appear to be the same species of bug, Boone is dumb as a sack of rocks, struggling to string together words, while Tuck speaks fairly clearly. The main difference between these two characters is that while Boone lives outside of Hallownest, Tuck lives beneath the city's capital. Basically, it appears as though Hallownest is a literal holy ground that raises the intelligence of those who dwell within. The Pale King established a path, starting from the kingdom's entrance in King's Pass, winding through Greenpath and the fungal wastes, and finally ending at the massive capital at Hallownest's heart. We now know the capital city as the City of Tears, but that was likely not its original name. The rain that falls down onto the city from the blue lake above didn't begin until after the kingdom collapsed. So unless the capital was originally named by some edgy literature student, the name City of Tears wouldn't have made much sense. The king's motivation for all this appears to have been his desire to be worshipped. The citizens of Hallownest believe that the Pale King created the world, and everything in it. Shrines to the king can be found scattered throughout the kingdom, and king's idols were created and distributed to followers of the king. Despite the worship, the Pale King often kept himself hidden from his subjects, possibly to hide his blemishes. I mean, if you look at the size of the real Pale King to his statue in the ancient basin, the man is clearly overcompensating. The Pale King's White Palace was also built underneath the city, separating him from his subjects even more so. At the same time, certain powers became shunned in Hallownest.
Wait, but this white palace that we just saw, this was never accessible unless we dream nailed the guy that was right outside of Hidden Station, right? But this is supposedly underneath Hallownest. We never got to it. Okay.
So, at the same time, certain powers became shunned in Hallownest, though we don't know for sure if the Pale King had anything to do with this. Lifeblood is a blue liquidy substance that leaves those who drink it feeling refreshed. However, the use of lifeblood was seen as a taboo, and those who used it were demonized as heretics.
Agree.
The use
and
of
by the way, I think the only time I used this was accidentally, because it just felt like, okay, super minor spoilers for Harry Potter 1, but I mean, come on, the movie's like 20 years old or something. It felt like that the unicorn blood, you know what I mean? It felt like that, where I drink it and it's like, oh, I get to be temporarily stronger. But listen, I'm gonna tell you right now, I sensed that was like the golden apple in Adam and Eve, you know? Talking biblical talk.
Soul for combat was also shunned. Soul is a sort of life force in Hollow Knight that animates the bodies of living creatures. But some characters are able to control the soul of others to conjure powerful spirits. But aside from a few exceptions, no citizens of Hallownest ever use this power. However, the Pale King didn't rule alone. There was another higher being in the mix, a being known as the White Lady.
White Lady.
The White Lady is a weird brute-like being that can be found in the modern-day Queen's Gardens. She is encased in a strange cocoon, and we know very little about her. With as much exposition we get for the Pale King, there is next to nothing on the White Lady. But one thing we do know is that she likes to breed. Like, a lot. The White Lady would often retreat to the Queen's Gardens, an area of land once controlled by the Mosskin. How exactly she walked around and actually went places is a lore question too deep for even my expertise. The White Lady is also
too deep for your expertise, but not for the Champion of Fools. Allow the Champion of Fools but a mere 10 seconds to think of how that may have happened, and he can come up with it.
Also known as a pale being, along with the Pale King. What exactly are pale beings? Well, we don't know for sure, but they seem to stand out even amongst higher beings, as being even more powerful. I know that's a little confusing, so let's try using an example. I'd say that regular higher beings are like a TP-Link Archer C7 AC1750 wireless dual-band gigabit router, while pale beings are like the Asus RT-AX88U AX6000 dual-band 8X gigabit Wi-Fi router.
I was thinking the same thing.
Under the Pale King, Halnest underwent a bit of an industrial revolution. He ordered the construction of the stagways, which were used to transport passengers and
really?
He ordered the construction of the stagways, which were used to transport passengers and goods. The Forgotten Crossroads and the storerooms above the City of Tears were used to store goods that traveled along these stagways. The king also ordered the construction of the tramways, because literally no one is safe from the threat of automation. A tram was built between the Forgotten Crossroads and the resting grounds. A second tram was built from the kingdom's edge across the ancient basin over to Deep Nest. And then a third tram was started in Deep Nest and attempted to go further into Deep Nest.
I was wondering about
this. I'm not
sure
how useful that would have been to the bugs of Hallownest, but whatever. The Pale King's a smart guy. I'm not going to question him. But anyway, the Pale King's super smart plan to build a tram in Deep Nest. And
shown here being dead is the same equivalent of the Pale King was a smart guy, and then just showing him doing a face like just showing his dead body there was that was good.
Ended up getting a few of his tram workers killed. The bugs of Deep Nest rejected the Pale King's attempt to build a tram in their territory, further cementing the poor relations shared between the two groups. Aside from convenient fast travel, regular pathways were also used to cart goods around the kingdom. From this was born probably one of the most important groups in Hallownest, and perhaps even all of fiction. An elusive guild of bugs, simply known as the Menderbugs, took to maintaining the various signs scattered throughout Hallownest. From the journal entry of one Menderbug, we can catch a glimpse into their ancient and unknowable minds.
Dear, dear diary, isn't life just the most beautiful thing? Fixing signs, mending posts, let them break, I say. I'm a better mender for all that repairing. I sometimes doubt there's a single bug in all of Hallownest happier than me.
Another example of the Pale King.
As he was talking, by the way, I was like, oh my god, I probably broke like 30 of those signs. And I was like, I was a little scared for a second, but then apparently he enjoys that.
His expanding infrastructure is the Crystal Peak. This area is filled with crystals that grow rapidly along walls, ceilings, and even the shells of certain bugs. These crystals were considered valuable to the bugs of Hallownest, resulting in large-scale mining efforts. We don't actually see the crystals used anywhere else in Hallownest, but they are said to contain a sort of energy. The crystals are also said to sing, if you listen very carefully.
I knew something would be like that.
In terms of military, Hallownest's first line of defense appeared to be a group simply known as the Five Great Knights. The members of this esteemed
coalition... Guys, I have to 70 seconds really bad, so I'm going to toss you guys in the clubs real quick and then I'll be back. But I'm ready to dial in. I might even come back with trail mix. I'll be right back.
Simply known as the Five Great Knights. The members of this esteemed coalition were Ogrim, Hagamol, Zamir, Drya, and Isma. For being so important, most of the information about these knights has been lost to time. Ogrim is the knight we know the most about, since he is one of the few knights still alive during the events of the game. Ogrim expressed a great amount of loyalty towards the king, and he maybe had something going on with Isma, but we really don't know. Hagamol was known for his sense of humor and his soft-spoken voice, but at the same time, he was also dummy thick. Mysterious Ymir arrived in Halnest from a serene land, bringing with her a collection of delicate flowers. At some point, she also got into a relationship with a mantis, but not just any mantis, a daughter of one of the mantis lords. So yeah, it seems like these great knights were slaying in more ways than one. All we really know about Drya is that she was fierce, caring, and wise. As for Isma, she was described as being kind. She also appears to be some sort of weird plant life form, but there's no information on where she's from or what her powers were. The 5 Great Knights play an important role in the Champion's Call, the Knotted Grove, and the Battle of the Black Worm. We have no idea what these events were or how they affected Halonest, but they sound cool nonetheless. During Halonest's reign, there was another strange area that seemed to exist separate from the Pale.
I think we all know. Listen. Yes, I could recognize this any day of the week. I think we all know who the champion of this area is.
King's rule. Carved out of the corpse of an ancient bug, an area called the Colosseum of Fools was constructed, and it was a destination for warriors from outside Halonest. The sole purpose for fighting in the Colosseum appeared to be simply for glory, with a mysterious figure.
Yes, simply for glory. Well, glory is all I need, yes.
You're known as the Lord Fool, overseeing the combat. We don't know when the Colosseum was constructed, or if the Pale King was involved, but one of his servants, the Pale Lurker, became a champion in the Colosseum, perhaps indicating the Pale King's approval. And finally, there was the Royal
That guy became a champion?
where the fecal excrement of the kingdom was washed out into the fungal wastes. This area saw the rise of a species of disapproval. And finally, there was the Royal Waterways, where the fecal excrement of the kingdom was washed out into the fungal wastes.
Okay.
This area saw the rise of a species of parasite-like creatures called the Flukes. The Flukes spawned from the Fluke Marm, a giant monster with cavities in which tinier flukes live. There really isn't too much lore involved.
I will say, here's what I will say. Okay, this is again, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. The fact that Deep Nest gets so much hate, yet the Royal Waterways does not, is just insane. The noises, the monsters, everything about the Royal Waterways is terrible. And Deep Nest, by the way, Deep Nest is actually not that bad. I'm being serious. Deep Nest is legitimately not that bad, and actually kind of a cool area.
But I do need to point out that the Fluke Marm is canonically a MILF. Like, that's not even debatable. The sky is blue, 2 + 2 = 4, and we all want to fuck this thing. And so this was the Kingdom of Halonest.
Allow me to add one more in there. The sky is blue, 2 + 2 = 4, we all want to chimp that thing, and also, Trevor Treefort is the real champion of fools.
At its height, Halonest was a vast kingdom connected by a network of stagways and tram stations. The bugs of Halonest mourned their dead on the resting grounds, engaged in commerce using Geo, the de facto currency of the region, and a thriving capital located in the middle of the kingdom. The Pale King had succeeded in crafting a full-blown society, but we all know there are pitfalls to living in a society. As a suspiciously knowledgeable hunter points out in his journal, the Pale King had created a population of weak and pathetic creatures. The bugs of Halonest did not hunt for their own food, and had become complacent with their comfort. This is even more obvious with the east wing of the capital. These greedy members of Halonest's high society became complete cowards, obsessed with riches and plum from excess wealth. The bugs living in Halonest Prime looked quite different than the instinctive simpletons they once were. Their savagery had been replaced with intelligence, and through that intellect, they gave the Pale King the devotion and service he desired. And while there were a few snags along the way, they were shining times for the king and his subjects. Resting at the threshold of Halonest is a strange lore tablet, proclaiming Halonest to be the last and only civilization. It calls Halonest an eternal kingdom. This appears to have been the Pale King's goal, for Halonest to stand against a wasted world as a final beacon for civilization. And that was the Pale King's ultimate folly, to think that he could succeed where so many others had failed before. Long before the Pale Kings or the Barry Bensons of the world.
Okay, one thing I am thinking about right now is that earlier in the video, I'm almost certain he said no one has ever seen the Pale King, which means the Pale King would be like a deity, like a god. And yet, when we dream nail into that one guy that's right outside of Hidden Station, and we finally complete the White Palace, we get to the end, we see the physical embodiment of the Pale King, and he showed it several times. Like, those two things aren't adding up. How are we able to see him then? How are we able to see his physical embodiment?
The land of Hallownest was controlled by an ancient caste. Hints of Hallownest history are littered throughout the land, with the most notable examples being the soul totems and arcane eggs. One sect of these ancient bugs didn't worship a god like the Pale King or any lord, but instead a dark and mysterious substance known as the Void. This ancient caste once also tried to lay claim to the entire land of Hallownest, but they too failed. In his quest to conquer all of Hallownest, the Pale King had made an enemy long forgotten, an enemy that was
Radiance?
about to be remembered.
Radiance?
I mentioned earlier that the Moth tribe entirely forgot about the Radiance in order to worship the Pale King, but that isn't quite true. Memories of her still lingered, and hushed whispers of faith kept the Radiance alive. At the summit of the Crystal Peak, a location known as Hallownest Crown, a strange collection of glyphs can be found. Joining these glyphs is a statue of the Radiance, presiding over the kingdom below. This old summit is the sole standing shrine left to the Radiance. This was built in order to keep the memory of the Radiance alive. The Radiance's light began to appear in the dreams of Hallownest citizens. This light manifested itself in
I had no idea. I legitimately, until right now, did not piece together that the statue at the top of that Hallownest crest area or whatever was Radiance. I did not piece that together until just now.
Infection that ravaged through the kingdom's tunnels. Those infected would fall into a deep sleep and awaken with broken minds. Some of the lesser bugs tried to resist the Radiance's light, which only resulted in them being consumed by it even more so. Many infected bugs lost their wills and began attacking bugs that weren't infected. The infection also twisted.
Wait, I have a question. So the ones like those bugs that have orange blobs in them and they run at you and they explode, as well as the other taller ones that like spit stuff, those were the bugs that resisted Radiance's whatever. What do you call it? Resisted her something, and became even more consumed by it. So Radiance did this to Forgotten Crossroads? This was Radiance's doing? Yes? The Radiance is basically an info hazard infection. Correct. Well, so who the hell is the Hollow Knight? The Hollow Knight didn't do that, chimp? Hang on, sorry, hang on. Hey, I'm gonna click play. Just give me a second to think about it. Give me a second to think about this. Is the Radiance evil? Is the Radiance evil? Or is the Hollow Knight evil? Or is no one evil?
Twisted the bodies of its hosts, causing them to bloat and occasionally develop orange cysts on their bodies. For many victims, they were reverted back to their basic instincts, carrying out the duties they once fulfilled in life, but now as mindless slaves. Those caught up in the infection were linked into the Radiance's hive mind, allowing her to control their bodies if needed. As the infection spread across Hallownest, many groups looked to solutions to fight off the Radiance's light. The gates to the City of Tears were closed in an attempt to keep the infection from reaching the city. The stagways were also shut down at some point, and many of the stags eventually died out, but some took more proactive efforts against the infection. The scholars of the Soul Sanctum decided to harness the power of Soul in an attempt to fight the infection. This resulted in the deaths of hundreds of bugs, whose souls were sucked out and injected into the bodies of the scholars. Their goal was to achieve some kind of pure focus, which would somehow protect them from plagues of the mind. The scholars' leader, the Soul Master, was driven mad by the sheer power of Soul, and his entire sect failed to avoid infection. But hey, at least they took as many innocent people down with them as they could. The Mantis tribe, showing a stronger will than the common bug, were able to stave off the infection. However, one of the 4 Mantis Lords turned against his sisters. He and his followers took in the infection willingly, as it gave them more strength and courage. At some point during all this, the Traitor Lord and his followers were exiled from the Mantis village, eventually taking up residence in the Queen's Gardens. The Traitor Lord's daughter ended up dying at some point.
Hold up. Okay, hold up. So the Mantis Lords resisted. Hang on. The Mantis Lords resisted the Radiance's infection, but the Traitor Lords and the Mantises that are in Queen's Garden embraced it because it made them stronger, and that's why they're traitors? Is that correct? The Traitor Lord is the fourth Mantis. Yes. Okay. Infection makes one stronger. So, okay. So, from what it sounds like, the Radiance is the one that's evil. Okay, listen, this is what it sounds like so far. The Radiance is the one that's evil. The Radiance is the one that's trying to corrupt and infect all of Hallownest. The Mantis Lords are the ones that resisted it. Some things resisted it. If they were too close, it didn't matter. They would still get infected. And then others embraced it because it made them more powerful, so they kind of are giving in to infection.
This is the same Mantis that
Let me know how
was
that
in a
sounds.
relationship with Zamir, one of the 5 Great Knights. But the Mantises rejected their union because of Zamir, one of the 5 Great Knights. But the Mantises rejected their union because of Zamir's outsideness. As a gamer, this type of prejudice is all too familiar. And honestly, it makes me
Is that
sick.
Dan? Or wait, is that Dan or this guy? Is that Dan Salvato? No, that's not Dan, right? That's not Dan, right? Yeah, W. I don't think this is Dan.
With the 5 Great Knights completely useless to fight against the infection, the Pale King devised his own scheme. A scheme involving a strange substance known as Void. As I mentioned earlier, the Pale King's White Palace was built in an area called the Ancient Basin, but his castle wasn't the only noteworthy thing down there. At the bottom of the Ancient Basin was the entrance to a pit known as the Abyss. Within the Abyss was a lake composed of void.
I'm aware.
The Pale King realized that this void could be given form, as evidenced by an imprint of such deep within the Abyss, possibly left there by the ancient civilization that predated Hallownest. The Pale King devised a workshop in his palace, where he placed void in armor shells imbued with soul, creating servants known as King's Molds and Wing Molds. These void creatures were somehow imprinted with the desire of the Pale King, so that they would serve him. It isn't clear when the Pale King started making these creatures. There is evidence to imply that even common bugs were aware of King's Molds. But the point is, the Pale King turned to the void in order to create another creature, one that he believed could contain the Radiance and her infection. He tried to create a pure vessel. The Radiance's infection needs its host to have a will and a mind in order to enslave it. A pure vessel would be a creature made of void designed to lack those features. The Pale King believed that by harnessing the void inside a pure vessel, he would be able to stop the infection and keep Hallownest lasting eternal. But his method for creating this so-called pure vessel was incredibly cruel. This is where the White Lady and her King Kong-sized libido come into play. These two higher beings engaged in
Her King Kong-sized libido. Oh my god. I've never heard that before. I've never heard that.
a union of some kind, resulting in the creation of several eggs that were dropped down into the abyss. There, the void seeped into these eggs, corrupting the offspring of the Pale King and the White Lady. This act resulted in the creation of the vessels. The vessels are not technically considered to be alive. They are shells created from the Pale King and White Lady that have been filled with the void. Within each vessel is a shade, a completely void being hidden behind the face of the vessel. Vessels are also non-gendered, I guess because they're dead or something? I'm not sure if that's how that works, but whatever. I'm not an expert on these kinds of things. I don't work at ICE anymore. Thousands of vessels were created during this process, but only one was chosen as the pure vessel. This particular vessel, chosen by the Pale King, was deemed the Hollow Knight, and was taken away to the White Palace. But I want to take a bit of a closer look at this part of the story. There are a number of questions and theories surrounding this moment that I really want to dig into. The big question surrounding this moment is, why was the Hollow Knight chosen over any other vessel? One common theory is that the Pale King took these vessels back to the White Palace and evaluated them using his giant collection of buzz.
Oh, let me tell you. If only I were alive back then, let me tell you. If only I were alive back then, my god, it would have been an easy choice for the Pale King, let me tell you. My god, it would have been an easy choice.
Saws. This theory is probably the least likely explanation.
Oh.
It kinda exists just
Okay.
to explain the buzzsaws, which is quite the mystery, I'll admit, but doesn't really mesh with the vessels very well. How does being good at Super Meat Boy prove that you are a worthy vessel? And while thinking about logistics in a game about magic bugs is never a good idea, how exactly did the Pale King transfer these thousands of vessels to his palace without characters like the Dung Defender finding out? So this means that the Pale King probably made his decision without taking any of the vessels out of the Abyss. So how did the Pale King make his evaluation? I think the best explanation comes from a theory I originally heard from a user named Golden Flower Fan. Basically, the vessels were hatched down at the bottom of the Abyss, and the first one to make it to the top was chosen by the Pale King. In a memory of this event,
okay.
we see
That reminds
vessels
me, I don't know if you guys have ever seen, I'm not going to do any spoilers, but the movie's been out for like over 10 years. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Batman with Christian Bale, the third one, The Dark Knight Rises. That reminds me of something similar to what happens in that movie. That's interesting though. That'd be cool. I like both of the theories so far. I like the White Palace obstacle course theory, and I also like this one. That seems pretty cool.
falling from above back down into the pit of the
Yeah.
Abyss.
That makes
Perhaps
sense.
these vessels weren't being cast down into the Abyss, but fell while trying to escape out of it. The lore tablet outside the Abyss appears to support this theory. It reads, "Our pure vessel has ascended. Beyond lies only the refuse and regret of its creation. We shall enter that place no longer." This tablet was likely written right after the Hollow Knight was chosen, considering that is when the entrance to the Abyss was sealed off. The tablet proclaims that the pure vessel has ascended,
Yeah.
or in other words, climbed out of the Abyss. And while cut content should
And
never be considered,
That by the way, that would make sense. That cutscene would make sense then. Like the king was there, the Pale King was there to receive the first one, the first vessel that makes it up. That cutscene makes a lot of sense if that's the correct theory.
canon, I would just like to point out that an earlier version of this tablet, found in the game's code, was even more explicit about this. It read, "From below, our pure vessel has ascended."
Yeah.
But how does making it to the top of the Abyss first prove that the Hollow Knight is somehow a perfectly hollow vessel? Well, I think this whole concept might just be a misconception. What if the Hollow Knight wasn't any different from the other vessels? All the vessels were made in the exact same way after all. The idea that the Hollow Knight was somehow more hollow than the other vessels comes from the fact that there were so many vessels created in the first place. If they only needed one, then why create so goddamn many? I mean, this is like Octomom on
Where's
steroids. Well, these are bugs we're talking about, so it would make sense that multiple offspring would come from one egg.
Why is that a confusing question though? Like, why is that a confusing question? You know what I mean? If you give birth to a whole bunch of things, you just have that much likely. Like, if I select 10 random people and I'm trying to find the highest jumper in the world, the person that can jump the highest, why would I select 10 people versus 1,000? If I select 1,000 people, then I'm gonna be able to. Whoever is the highest jumper in that crowd is gonna be a higher jumper than the one of 10, right? Just based on stats. Why? I don't understand why this is a confusing question.
And it might have been a precaution to produce multiple vessels in hopes that at least one would be able to successfully escape the
Right?
Abyss.
Yes.
Now another explanation could be that the Pale King just yeeted other vessels that made it to the top first, after determining that they weren't hollow, which would better explain why so many were created. Ultimately, the exact details aren't super important, but I do find it interesting how many different interpretations can be pulled from this part of the lore. After the Hollow Knight was chosen, the Pale King sealed the doorway to the Abyss, leaving the discarded vessels to rot away in darkness. These actions were not taken lightly by the
Okay.
Pale King or the White Lady. Both participants expressed shame in what they did, but saw no other option to save the kingdom. But the vessels weren't the only poor saps sealed away in the Abyss. There's also a lighthouse that was built on top of a naturally formed spire,
I remember this.
its light shining down on an ocean of abyss below. Inside was one of the Pale King's royal retainers, who was left in charge of keeping the lighthouse turned on. So this brave soul was willingly sealed in a dark and dangerous tomb for the rest of his life, just so he could not pull a lever. Well, at least he was living with purpose. With the Abyss sealed and the Hollow Knight chosen, the Pale King's plan was beginning to come together. The Hollow Knight was raised and trained to prime form, causing it to grow several times its original size.
Okay.
We don't know exactly why this happened, But I guess the Hollow Knight is just a grower and not a shower. We know that the Hollow Knight was trained to use a nail, but why was this even necessary? One possible explanation is that the Hollow Knight needed to protect itself in case an intruder tried to kill it.
Okay, so there's two things I'm thinking about right now, and I'm assuming they're going to be answered in the video. There's that one cutscene with the Hollow Knight when he was little, like my size, and the king is receiving him from the top of the abyss. The second cutscene that we saw was after we beat the Path of Pain. We saw a cutscene of I think the Hollow Knight and the Pale King, and they were doing something. But I didn't know that it was them, so I didn't understand what the cutscene meant. But I forget what it was. And now I'm wondering what that is. And then number two, who the hell am I then? Like, who the hell is Scrimbio? You know what I mean? If that's the Hollow Knight, because right now the Hollow Knight sounds like the main character. Who the hell is Scrimbio? Like, who was I playing as the entire time?
You know, like the player. Or perhaps this was important in the process of containing the Radiance. Unfortunately, the details of that are never fully explained. The Hollow Knight might have somehow focused the Radiance inside itself, but Team Cherry gives us no explanation of how that might have worked.
What?
But that still wasn't enough for the Pale King. Additional seals were needed in order to protect the Hollow Knight's physical body while the Radiance was trapped inside of it. To achieve this, the Pale King sought the help of three particular bugs.
Wait. The first time we ever fought Radiance was by dream nailing the Hollow Knight when Hadida came in, right? Hadida came in, chained up that MFer, we dream nailed the Hollow Knight, and then we fought Radiance? Is that right? That was the first time we ever encountered Radiance? Hornet. Okay.
Bugs, who would later be known as the Dreamers. Lurien the Watcher, Motomon the Teacher, and Hera the Beast. Lurien is definitely the most mysterious of the three Dreamers. He lived in the Watcher's Spire in the City of Tears. From there, Lurien watched over the city with his telescope. Lurien was a pretty big fan of the king, so it probably took little convincing for him to lie down for him. Lurien might also be tied to another strange incident that occurred in the City of Tears. Hidden on some of Lurien's lore tablets are images of jars, the same jars that can be found stockpiled in the Tower of Love. This building sits on the outskirts of the city, and is the setting of one of the most bizarre bosses in the game, the Collector. The Collector is a void construct that appears to have been made from the same mold used to create the King's molds. But the Collector is unique because, well,
Good grief, he's naked!
The Collector stayed in the Tower of Love with a noble bug who likely owned the establishment.
Guys, all I'm going to say is, if this is about to be some Tower of Love lore, I cannot wait. This is what I said. I was telling you guys, as soon as we found the Tower of Love, I'm like, I would spend hours listening to Tower of Love lore specifically.
In the tower, a number of bugs can be found captured in jars, implying that these two were tasked with collecting these creatures. However, the Collector somehow became obsessed with grubs, creating a map to keep track of grubs it captured in jars, as well as keeping a strange shrine displaying a grub in the style of the Vitruvian Man.
I remember.
Eventually, the bug staying with the Collector decided to lock it inside the Tower of Love, and fled to the Queen's Gardens, where it died, likely due to overexposure to the void. Despite being locked up in the tower, the Collector is still spotted by the Hunter at some point, which either means this only happened recently, or the Hunter has been farting around in Hallownest for a long-ass time. We have no idea what these creatures were trying to do. It's implied that the Collector was trying to preserve the creatures of Hallownest, perhaps trying to protect them from the spread of the infection.
I don't think that's
true. But we don't
true.
know where the Collector's obsession with grubs originated. And while Lurien does seem connected to all of this, we don't know how involved he was with this operation, or what its end goal exactly was. Motomon the Teacher lived
Okay, maybe I'm clueless, okay? Maybe I'm clueless, but that doesn't make any sense. Why would you imprison something just to keep it safe? The Collector is not acting like someone that's trying to keep things safe. You know what I mean? I disagree with that.
Teacher's Archives, a library built atop a lake of acid in the Fog Canyon. The lower half of her body consists of tentacles, making her a popular subject for the
Tentacles, you say? I'm listening. Yes, okay. You have my attention now.
thriving Hollow Knight R34 community. The Archives and the Fog Canyon as a whole
Too far.
are also filled with these strange Metroid knockoffs. These creatures are
I
likely
did not need to
related
hear that.
Monomon in some way. They could be her live offspring, her test tube babies, or possibly even her shit. Motomon uses futuristic cathode ray tube things to store information about Halonest. Several terminals in the teacher's archive go into detail about the Pale King's plan to defeat the Radiants, indicating that Motomon had intimate knowledge of what she was taking part in. Finally, the Pale King sought the help of Hera the Beast, the Queen of Deep Nest. Now, as I mentioned earlier, relations between Halonest and Deep Nest were kinda not great. Unlike the other two dreamers, Hera needed to be convinced in order to help the Pale King. Hera would eventually agree to become a dreamer, in exchange for a child. The Pale King agreed, and the two engaged in a dalliance, which is a fancy way of saying they totally boned. The White Lady was okay with this arrangement. In fact, she might have been watching from the closet. The motive behind Hera's request is never elaborated on, but it appears as though the King of Deep Nest was dead at this point.
This is, by the way, this is the lore that I'm talking about right here. This is the exact lore that I'm talking about. Where was this? Where was this? This is what I really wanted to see here.
Bug. So perhaps she desired the Pale King's pale seed so that her child could be of high birth. The bargain between Hera and the Pale King resulted in the birth of Hornet. She became known as the gendered child because, unlike the Pale King's other children, Hornet was not hollowed out by the Abyss. Hera and Hornet spent little time together, as Hera had to make good on her end of the bargain. And so the three dreamers were put to rest. Through their actions, a seal was placed over the black egg, prohibiting entrance into the chamber. These dreamers also had their own protection. At the base of Lurian's spire, the Watcher Knights guarded access to their master's body. Motomon's body was protected by a giant jellyfish named Umu. On top of this, Motomon entrusted her servant Quirrell with a mask which would be required to break an additional seal she had placed over herself. So she basically is double wrapping herself. As for Hera, we're not really sure what protected her, since it is never actually seen in-game. We don't know where this creature is hiding, but whoever it is, they really suck at their job. Now there appears to be one more element to the Pale King's plan, involving the Weavers. Hidden away in the Weaver's Den is an incomplete seal of binding, woven from silk. This design prominently features the Hollow Knight's head, and can be found in the White Palace, as well as blocking the exit during the Hollow Knight fight. Silk spools created by the Weavers can be found in the Stag Station in Deep Nest, as well as the Stag Station next to the White Palace. These spools can also be found in the Pale King's workshop. We know that the Weavers were closely tied to Hera and Hornet, so their actions might have been a part of the deal between the Pale King and Hera. Once the Hollow Knight was ready, the Radiance was somehow channeled into the vessel, which was then placed inside of a giant black egg located in the Forgotten Crossroads. This egg was built to sustain the Hollow Knight, and itself appears to be fashioned from void. The Hollow Knight was chained up, and the entrance to the black egg was locked behind a powerful seal created by the three dreamers. Initially, this convoluted plan actually worked, and the infection was successfully contained. Memorials to the Hollow Knight and the Dreamers were erected in the City of Tears and the Resting Grounds. But this is the part of the story where things get a little bit hazy.
Okay, sorry, I have to pause. I have to pause the recap here. Where these guys came from, I'm still uncertain about. But I know that they contributed to keeping the infection at bay. The vessel, aka the Hollow Knight, is the one that served the biggest role. And the Hollow Knight had to be incredibly strong to contain the Radiance, to contain the infection, and they chained the Hollow Knight up so that there was no way of the infection getting out because the Hollow Knight was containing it, right? But where did these originate from? I think I understand their role in keeping the infection contained, but where do they originate from? You know what I mean? They were just important people Lorraine used to watch the city. Okay. I think I have it so far. I'm following along, I think, okay.
By the time these statues were constructed, citizens had taken to writing on parchment woven from spider silk, which was all destroyed when water started pouring down onto the city. We don't know how long the Hollow Knight was able to completely contain the infection. Bugs from Dirtmouth used to go to the Temple of the Black Egg to pray, saying they felt at peace within the walls. But after a while, they stopped going, perhaps indicating that the infection was beginning to leak out again. The infectious air continued to seep through Hallownest.
Wait, so basically,
years.
okay, if you think about it, I'm evil then. Scrimbio is evil. I walked around Hallownest, dream nailing the bodies of these 3 important people, right, that are keeping the Black Egg sealed. I was directly responsible for the cause of releasing the infection. So, like, what chimping side am I on? I murdered the Hollow Knight. And for what reason? Like, for what reason am I doing that? Like, lore-wise. The reason why I did it in the game is because it was a thing to do. Lore-wise, why am I doing that? I'm assuming that'll be answered.
Eventually even reaching the deepest parts of the kingdom. As it turns out, the Pale King's pure vessel wasn't quite so pure after all. The Hollow Knight had been tarnished by an idea instilled. While the game never explicitly tells us what that idea was, it does hint strongly at what it might be. Hidden away in the White Palace is a memory showing the Hollow Knight and the Pale King sharing a moment.
Yeah.
The Hollow Knight might have developed a parental bond to the Pale King. And who could blame it? The Pale King is a pretty great dad after all. You know, if you ignore the infanticide and everything. Remember those smug mushroom dickheads?
Yes.
Well, it turns out their trust in the Pale King was a complete mistake. That shared mind isn't looking too good now, is it? In the fungal core, the corpse of a giant mushroom lies dormant. Its final thoughts were, "Pale worm, what good to see a demise unavoidable?" This could imply that the Pale King always knew that his kingdom was doomed. All he could do was delay the inevitable. This is likely the moment when Hallownest, as it once was, entirely collapsed. The Hollow Knight had not completely stopped the infection, and while it may have taken a while, Hallownest was eventually brought low. It's at this point that characters and areas begin to resemble as we know them in-game. When it became clear that the Hollow Knight was not able to contain the Radiance, the Pale King resorted to his final plan. He fucked off, hiding himself, his White Palace, and his Pale Court in the Dream World.
Wait a minute. Okay, that makes so much sense now. Why there's I'm gonna say 2 different endings in the same Hollow Knight fight, because the 2 of the endings are so similar you can just count them as one. But that makes so much sense that I can choose to kill the Hollow Knight, which is the vessel containing the infection, or I can dream nail into the Hollow Knight's mind and essentially turn him into the pure vessel, because the Radiance is like that we go inside of the Hollow Knight and fight the Radiance with the dream nail, right? And that's essentially us choosing to combat the infection as opposed to combat the vessel. So that makes so much more sense now. Like, that makes so much sense, the actual choices that I'm doing. Like, I'm essentially making a choice. Like, whose side do I want to be on, basically?
All of the furniture in the palace was covered under white sheets, similar to how people in the real world cover their furniture while away on long trips. The palace was also completely covered with thorns and buzzsaws, similar to how people in the real world cover their houses with thorns and buzzsaws.
Yeah.
The Pale King would eventually pass away while
grandmother used to make those plentiful on the playground when I was a child. That looks just like the playgrounds my grandmother used to set up.
Sitting on his throne in the White Palace. There's no confirmation on what killed him, but there are a few things to consider. The throne room is incredibly dark compared to the rest of the palace, and the particle effects and ambient track in this room are identical to that of the Abyss. All of the king's molds surrounding the Pale King are dead. The ancient basin itself also has become stained with the presence of void, as it can be seen as high as the rundown elevator shaft leading back to the city. Remember that bug that was sealed away in the Abyss to make sure the lighthouse wasn't turned off? Well, the lighthouse was turned off. I guess that whole living with purpose thing is a crock of shit after all. It seems as though the Sea of Void itself actually convinced this bug to betray his king and turn off the lighthouse. Now I know what you're thinking. Exactly how conscious is the Void? Is the Void able to think for itself? Can it form strategies? Does it host a podcast? Well, according to this Chozo statue rip,
here's a couple things. Here's a couple things that I just want to say about the thing where it says about the thing where the Pale King knew that the Hallownest was chimped and the Pale King just tried to delay the chimping of Hallownest as long as possible. That's so realistic because that happens like every day or like in every government ever. Like the same thing there's like been historical cases that happening everywhere. The second thing though is that why would they even put the guy up there? I know this guy talks about it. But why would they even put the guy up there? Why would the Pale King put that guy up there to be there with the lever if they could just leave the lever on and not have somebody in there that could potentially become corrupted and turn the lighthouse off? That doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't they have just sealed it shut and just kept the lever, like kept the lighthouse on?
The void is powerful, but not unified. So while it can thrash around at things that come near it, or call out in unison to turn off a light, it's not a single conscious being. Getting back to the Pale King, one could argue that the void might have played a role in his ultimate demise, and I've argued that viewpoint in the past, but we have to remember that there isn't enough evidence to know for sure. As an expert lawyer and a good friend of mine, Johnny Cochran, once said, "Any evidence that the void was involved in the Pale King's death is circumstantial." My name is Johnny Cochran. Just above the White Palace, the bugs in the City of Tears weren't faring much better.
That sounds a lot like something grandmother used to say. She said a quote that was eerily similar.
Even if we ignore the fact that the infection was still around, there were other issues that helped lead to the city's downfall. Due to the gates being sealed, some bugs resorted to cannibalism in order to avoid starvation. And there's also that metric fuckton of corpses lining the walls of the Soul Sanctum.
Oh wait, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the eating the corpses, that took place in the pleasure house, right? Or whatever, the place where Madeline sings, or Marissa, or whatever her name is. Am I right about that? Were they like 8 people? Was that in the same place? Madeline. Not Madeline. Whatever. Marissa. Whoever the hell I'm talking about. The one that goes, ah! Are you? Does that make sense? Yes, that's where it is. Okay.
And done, the only citizen left standing is Eternal Emelita, who just laughs her ass off about it like she's a fucking Dark Souls character. The White Lady ends up in a cocoon deep within the Queen's gardens. She decided to place bindings on herself in order to keep her from spreading her seed. She claims that this is because of the shame she feels in helping the Pale King create the vessels. But honestly...
Okay, can you imagine that? Imagine your libido is so high, your chimptual drive is so high that you have to physically restrain yourself so that you can't move to not go out and act on your desires. Can you imagine that?
It's probably just her kink. The White Lady also diminished her power, possibly as a way to keep herself hidden from unwanted visitors. Outside her cocoon, Drya stood guard, protecting her queen from the violent traitor mantises. Drya is eventually killed off by these bugs, which is actually pretty pathetic if you think about it. I mean, we're talking like the Netgear WPN824N N150 wireless router pathetic. Speaking of great knights dying pathetically, let's move on to Hagamel. Hagamel held the city crest, a key used to open one of the gates to the City of Tears. At some point, Hagamel's armor shell was stolen by a maggot. Now, maggots were generally looked down upon and forced to do menial labor. They were incredibly weak, and basically deserved all of the discrimination they got. But this one maggot decided to turn the tide.
Guys, I just want to say, I haven't forgotten about, and I'm still sad that during my playthrough, I made a essence portal, put on the Defender's Crest, teleported back, and insta-killed one of the maggots that was mourning the False Knight's maggot body or whatever. I still feel bad that maggot is permanently dead now. Because I was wearing Defender's Crest.
He stole Hagamel's shell so that he could defend his downtrodden brothers. His actions weren't motivated by the infection,
the one on the right,
but instead was the result of how hierarchical caste systems will always lead to revolution from the working class, and that true freedom can only be achieved blah blah blah, capitalism is bad, subscribe to my Patreon. Ogre moved to the Royal Waterways and started living in shit, changing his name to Dung Defender. Now, I love wallowing in shit as much as the next guy,
yes,
but you'd have to really love shit to put up with living with the flukes. The Dung Defender kept an unwavering sense of duty and loyalty to the king, and love for his fellow knights, so much so that he made shit statues of them. How nice. Ogrim acted as the defender of the Pipeways, as well as Isma's Grove, A section of the royal waterways became filled with acid, and in the middle of it all rests Isma's corpse, which has been overcome by plant life. Isma is likely the one responsible for this acid blight, but we have no idea what happened to her. Hornet's whereabouts during this time are fairly mysterious. We know that she departed Deep Nest and didn't return until the events of the game. At some point, she took to guarding Halnest from intruding warriors, as well as the cast-off shell in the Kingdom's Edge. Despite the Kingdom's woes at large, fortunately this fate did not befall one of the fandom's favorite characters. The Menderbugs continued to fix the broken signs and wayposts of Halnest. From a diary entry, we can see that one Menderbug in particular had found himself on the precipice of a long and loving relationship.
Hello again, diary. Not long now until the next Minder Bash. For us stealthy types, we're a riotous bunch when we get together, and Minderberry kept flashing me that smile. It might be time to muster my courage and act on it. I love my home and my life, but sharing it with another? Why, that'd be the berry on top.
Greenpath also underwent some changes during this time. The Mosskin were waiting for
I'm just imagining I would, if someone had so much happiness and so much self-love that they started each diary journal entry with, "Hello again, diary. It is me, champion of fools again. Nice to talk to you." That's so wholesome. I don't know why.
Call, which would bring them back into the dream they were originally born from. But for some reason, Un's strength deteriorated. We don't know why this happened exactly. Was it due to the White Lady claiming part of her kingdom? Was it somehow due to the infection?
I'd also like to say 07 to the speaker here. 07 to that speaker that does not exist in my playthrough anymore.
Claiming part of her kingdom? Was it somehow due to the infection? Some Mosskin believe that Un went into hiding, but it appears as though Un is, in fact, calling to her children. But many of the Mosskin are unable to hear her call. Instead, many Mosskin seem to have taken the Radiance's infection into their leaves, which might explain why Greenpath became overgrown with vegetation despite Un's deteriorating powers. Mossy vagabonds even openly chose to forsake Un and worship the Radiance. Another tribe to be screwed over by the Radiance is the Hive, which fell to the infection after the death of their leader, Hive Queen Vespa.
I was wondering who that was.
But it appears as though this had little effect on their
because
civilization.
that Hive Queen or whatever was in the background of the only fight that we do there, the bee fight. The guy that has a sword or whatever. I don't remember whatever the thing's name was.
The Radiance's hive mind was already familiar to the bees, since the Hive probably operated under something similar already. So in other words, the Hive probably made out the best in this whole situation. Let's turn our attention back to the moths. After all, it's their god that keeps killing everybody. Well, the moth tribe didn't fare too well actually, as pretty much the entire tribe died out. The only known survivor is the seer. Despite the loss of her tribe, the seer continued to tend to the graves in the resting grounds.
Guys, is it bad? By the way, is it bad that I can't remember people's names, but I remember the noises they make? So the seer, this guy has said her name like several times, which is why I remember it. But I know exactly what noise she makes. She goes, I know, I can hear it in my head.
Also awaiting the arrival of the Wielder, a mysterious being that her tribe has dreamt of for a while. In the Kingdom's Edge, the land became covered in ash molting off of the worm's decomposing corpse. The Colosseum of Fools continued to thrive. The Lord Fool passed away
Colosseum of Fools,
point,
you say?
But nobody really seems to notice or even care. The fools inside the Colosseum were infected, but still seem to have maintained control over themselves. It seems possible that these bugs took in the infection willingly, similar to the Traitor Lord and his followers. This would have given them an edge in combat.
Yeah, I could sense it. I could sense something was off there, which is why I had to make an appearance. I could sense something was off in the Colosseum of Fools, which is why I needed to make an appearance, stop by, and put an end to it all. And by the way, I noticed this guy was dead. Nothing gets by the Champion of Fools.
Similar to using steroids, but without the whole shrinking testicles thing. However, even the Traitor Lord and his followers went mad, so what makes these fools any more special? As for the Pale King's champion, the Pale Lurker, well, she just went the normal kind of insane. There appears to have been another unforeseen event with the Pale King's plan. When the Hollow Knight was originally chosen, the door to the Abyss was sealed, trapping the discarded vessels within. But apparently, some vessels didn't get the memo. Vessel corpses can be found littered throughout the kingdom. There's one in the Ancient Basin, one in Greenpath, and several trapped in Nosk's lair in Deep
So,
Nest.
okay, by the way, please answer this, because I think this was already explained. Please answer this. These things that look like me, because these look different. These look different than these. I guess because they have color. But all of these came from this, and these came from the Pale Knight and the White Lady. Not this one, but the Pale Knight and the White Lady doing it. This, and this. They all came from the Pale Knight and the White Lady, or the three-eyed Mask Lady and the Pale King. They're all vessels. They're test subjects. Yeah, but who was it? The White Lady and the Pale Knight, or the Pale Knight and the three-eyed Mask Lady? All vessels. All from the White. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Another vessel that escaped from the abyss is the player character, the Knight. The exact details on how the vessels escaped the abyss is unclear. There are indications that they might have slipped into Deep Nest through some old passageway, given void influences in part of the area, and all the corpses found in Nosk's lair. At some point, all entrances to Hallownest were closed off, with the old well-endured mouth being the only way to sneak
Okay, thank
back.
you. Only Hornet came from Hurrah, which I'm assuming is the three-eyed Mask Lady. That's helpful.
Back in. Despite this, several people have wormed their way into the kingdom, with few ever returning. Characters like Relic Seeker Lem seemed content to just pillage artifacts from the ruined kingdom, but other bugs seemed interested in something greater. In the Howling Cliffs rests the corpse of a member of the Grim Troop. The task of this bug appears to have been to seek out Hallownest, so that the troop might be summoned to the kingdom in the future. The Grim Troop are basically a group of bugs that serve a higher being known as the Nightmare Heart. The troop keeps the heart alive by feeding on the nightmares of fallen kingdoms. This process also involves sacrificing the troop master to his own child because, hey, look at this cool ass boss battle. Another important group that traveled to Hallownest are the God Seekers. After being abandoned by their old gods, the gods of thunder and the gods of rain, these bugs left their home in the land of storms, seeking out a new god to worship. The God Seekers looked to gods to save them from their own silent mind. While traveling through the wastelands, the God Seekers constructed devices called God Tuners, which helped them seek out new gods. Through this device, they were able to detect the lingering power of the Pale King and find their way to Hallownest. When they arrived, however, the God Seeker was forced into hibernation. She was encased in a strange sarcophagus-like cocoon, which was itself chained up with a lock. It's not clear how this forced hibernation worked, seeing as the cocoon appears to have been made by the God Seeker herself. As for who put the cocoon in chains, I think the most likely candidate is the Dung Defender, considering how the God Seeker's cocoon is found in the junk pit in the waterways, an area the Dung Defender has tasked himself with protecting. This was the general picture of Hallownest after the Hollow Knight was sealed inside the Temple of the Black Egg. The kingdom was stuck in a kind of stasis, with the Pale King civilization destroyed and the Radiance unable to break free from her chains. The Pale King was rebelling against nature, trying to keep his work standing indefinitely. The stasis over Hallownest held for an age. How long is that exactly? Well, we have no idea. As I'm sure you've noticed, there really isn't a timeline for anything that happens in this game. We also have no idea how long any of these bugs can actually live. Elderbug wasn't around to see the stagways open, but we know several other characters were, implying that Elderbug is probably one of the youngest characters in the whole game. But this stasis Elderbug is probably one of the youngest characters in the
Who the hell was this? We saw this person one time. We saw this thing one time and never again. I thought the spider that we were fighting, the one where Hornet cracks her neck and turns into a spider. I thought that boss was this, but we saw this a single time.
The whole game. But this stasis over Hallownest wasn't going to last forever.
It was such a cool character too. It reminded me in Avatar. I won't spoil it, but there's a character that looks like that in Avatar in season 3 or 4 or whatever, whatever. But I was like, oh, this character is gonna be cool.
At that point, the Radiance erupted out of the Hollow Knight, cracking its shell and releasing a loud and powerful roar. The amount of infection leaking out of the Hollow Knight became even greater. The many corpses that lined the roads and cities of the kingdom sprang to life with the amplified power of the infection. This strengthened infection prompted the departure of the Weavers back to their old home. Now this old home might actually be Farloom,
Is
the
this
kingdom
Silksong?
in which Hollow Knight Silksong takes place. But the
Okay.
amount of knowledge we have about Silksong right now is pathetic. So I'm not saying
so we play as Hornet in Silksong. So we're gonna play as Hornet in Silksong? Why? Why would we not keep playing as Scrimbio? This
confirmed or anything. This is also around the time that Quirrell arrives back in Hallownest. His memory of Motomon appears to have been clouded due to his time outside of Hallownest. These events are depicted in the Quirrell prequel comic, which also shows an image of the Hollow Knight with a
Wait, what? Scrimbio's dying in every ending? Okay.
cracked shell. This
Guys, I have so many questions. I have so many questions right now, but I'm gonna keep watching this, just assuming that they're gonna be answered.
could mean that Quirrell's arrival happens roughly the same time the Hollow Knight's shell cracks. At around the same time Quirrell arrives in Hallownest, we also see the arrival of the player character, who is commonly referred to as the Knight. The Knight was one of the lucky vessels that was able to make its way out of the abyss. Somehow the Knight ended up venturing beyond Hallownest and into the wilds beyond. It's implied that the Knight was called to Hallownest by either the sealed Hollow Knight or the Radiance within. Regardless, once the Knight shows up and yeets itself off this cliff, the actual game of Hollow Knight finally begins. Now, there's a lot of details we could get into. Hallownest is full of NPCs and bosses, each with their own stories to tell. But to be honest, I don't think we need to go through all of them, since their stories are relatively straightforward. For example, let's look at the brooding Moloch. So why is the brooding Moloch brooding? Because all its friends are dead. And there you go, that's the lore for the
Not a
brooding
good enough
Moloch.
answer.
Also, it's the only character in the game with a visible asshole. Now, did you really need me to explain that to you? Probably not.
I think my tier list of bosses might have just reordered a bit. I think my favorite bosses tier list may have just reordered slightly.
So instead, I'm just
But I won't say anything further. I won't speak of it anymore.
going to talk about the interactions relating to Hollow Knight's main story. The Knight is eventually noticed by Hornet, who lures it deep into Greenpath. There, Hornet attempts to kill the Knight, claiming that she knows what it would try to do. At this point, Hornet views the Knight as being too weak. After the fight, Hornet can be found in the city.
Me being too weak? Me being too weak? Roll back the footage of me absolutely dumpstering Hornet every single time in Pantheon 5s.
Next to the statue of the Hollow Knight. Hornet mentions that the Knight has gained a resilience due to the time it spent in the void beyond Hallownest. This could be referring to the fact that some of those who leave Hallownest lose their memories, meaning the Knight would have no memories of its own tragic conception. Hornet tells the Knight that if it seeks to continue the stasis that keeps Hallownest standing, it must seek the Graven Ash, which is referring to the Kingdom's Edge. At this moment, Hornet sees the Knight as a possible replacement for the Hollow Knight. Basically, the Knight could break the seals that keep the Hollow Knight locked away, defeat the Hollow Knight, and contain the infection itself. It's at this point that I should mention that Hollow Knight actually has 5 different endings, because of course it would. I'm going to be explaining each of these endings in this video,
Okay,
as
thank
they
God.
each give us a different glimpse into the
Thank God,
mechanics
okay.
of Hollow Knight's world. Now, to get the easiest ending to Hollow Knight, Hornet's instructions to go to the Kingdom's Edge can be ignored completely. If the Knight stumbles upon the resting grounds, the 3 dreamers will appear and cast the Knight into the Dream Realm. There, Seer will come to the Knight's rescue and grant it the Dream Nail, a special blade that can tear the veil between the real world and the dream world. With the Dream Nail, the Knight can venture to the resting places of the 3 dreamers, curb stomp their asses, and unlock the entrance to the Black Egg. Inside the egg, the Knight finds the Hollow Knight chained up, silently watching over it. Once the chains are broken, the Hollow Knight screams with that familiar Radiance roar and pursues the Knight. As the fight progresses, the Hollow Knight starts trying to kill itself, Quirrell style. But then the Radiance starts
Wait,
using
what did
the
he say?
Hollow Knight starts trying to kill itself, Quirrell style. But then the Radiance starts using the Hollow Knight's body to perform her own attacks. Once defeated, the Hollow Knight begins to spew infection all over the place. The Knight can then focus the infection into itself. This results in the first ending of the game, called Hollow Knight. In this ending, the Knight usurps the Hollow Knight, prolonging the stasis over Hallownest. New chains and bindings appear out of fuck if I know, and contain the Knight. and a new seal is placed over the entrance to the Black Egg. Now there is one giant question looming over this ending. Can the night actually contain the infection indefinitely, or will the Radiant still manage to break free one day? Before we answer this question, let's look
You know
at
what,
some of
guys?
the other...
You know what? I hate. I'm not trying to like spoil the Zelda lore, but it's been around for so long. You know what Radiant sounds like? Radiant sounds like Ganondorf, and it sounds like basically the Radiance's infection is malice, right, from Breath of the Wild, and it's like I feel like there's a lot of parallels between that aspect of the story and this, whereas I guess the equivalent of Hollow Knight would be Link and Zelda, or I guess the Triforce, whatever contains the malice or whatever. But I'm drawing a lot of parallels between the two stories.
Other events that can transpire while playing the game. If the player chooses to go to Kingdom's Edge, Hornet will challenge the Knight one last time as a final test of strength. After her defeat, Hornet allows the Knight to access the cast-off shell, where the Pale King was originally hatched. By interacting with this egg, the Knight's shell is marked with the King's brand, technically making the Knight the new ruler of Hallownest. With the King's brand, the Knight can now open the entrance to the Abyss and discover the place of its birth. When leaving the Abyss, the Knight can encounter Hornet again, where for the first time, Hornet suggests that there are actually two outcomes the Knight can enact. She tells the Knight that it can either prolong Hallownest stasis, or face the heart of the Kingdom's infection. Within the Knight, Hornet sees a chance
hang on.
or Knight can enact. She tells the Knight that it can either prolong Hallownest stasis, or face the heart of the Kingdom's infection. Within the Knight, Hornet sees a chance for change. Instead of just replacing the Hollow Knight, Hornet believes that it may be possible to get rid of the infection completely by using the void inside of the Knight. After visiting the Abyss and obtaining
Wait a minute. Okay, so you're telling me that there was oh my god. So, okay, hang on. So you're telling me there was a cutscene just outside of the Abyss between Hornet and Scrimbio, me and Hornet, where Hornet tells me that you can either become the vessel, or Hornet told me that I basically could dream nail the Hollow Knight and try to fight whatever's inside of it. Did I know that before going into the fight? Because from my perspective, I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to know to dream nail this thing? How am I supposed to know that? But she straight up told me? Okay, listen, I will admit, I will take the L on that one. I'll take the L on that one because I had no clue that was told to me. I had no clue.
The Knight is capable of reaching the White Lady, hidden away in the Queen's gardens. The White Lady tells the Knight that she has been awaiting a vessel to accept a gift, that gift being one half of a charm called the King's Soul, which she claims will give the Knight more power. The White Lady goes on to explain that she can feel the weakening of the Hollow Knight within her roots. She tells the Knight that it is free of the blemishes that made the Hollow Knight a flawed vessel. From this dialogue, it is implied that the Knight can feel the weakening of the Hollow Knight within her roots. She tells the Knight that it is free of the blemishes that made the Hollow Knight a flawed vessel. From this dialogue, it is implied that the Knight truly is a pure vessel, capable of containing the Radiance successfully. But it's not quite that simple, so we're gonna have to dig a bit deeper into this. Basically, we're gonna need to answer a simple question. What exactly does it mean to be a Hollow Knight? Despite the White Lady's words, we have a number of instances where the characters and item descriptions mention that the Knight has a will, and maybe even a mind. But from the Pale King's dialogue when describing the Hollow Knight, it is stated that a pure vessel has no mind or will. So is the White Lady wrong? Or maybe even lying? Her eyes have been clouded by time, and she can be tricked into thinking that Ogrim is in the room when the Knight is wearing the Defender's Crest charm. She also thinks that Dryia is still alive, which, So maybe the White Lady is just senile. My problem with that theory is that the White Lady states that the vessels stand out to her clearly in a misted world, due to them being her spawn. She also questions whether or not the Knight sought her aid, which would imply that the Knight must have some kind of will. So for whatever reason, the White Lady thinks the Knight is still capable of containing the Radiance, even if it's still able to make decisions. After all, the Hollow Knight was considered pure, but they still taught it how to wield a fucking sword. I mean, if the knight were truly and completely hollow in a literal sense, it probably shouldn't even be able to walk, or draw a map, or open a goddamn bank account. In short, this whole concept of being hollow is so abstract and hard to define, I don't really feel comfortable giving a solid answer on whether or not the knight is or isn't truly hollow. And I think the game leaves room open for—
Here's what I will say. Here's what I will say about Millabelle, okay? I know a lot of times I will sarcastically talk about Chimchul favors here. Here's what I will say about Millabelle, is that I have a theory that, you know how the audio, when Millabelle is in the pleasure palace or whatever, and Millabelle's soaking in the water, right? I have a theory that when I'm striking her with my nail and the audio glitches, that she's still going, she continues to make those like pleasure noises. I have a theory that that's not actually a glitch, and Millabelle secretly, you know what I mean? Secretly is kind of into that stuff. I will say no more. I will say, listen, I'm not trying to turn into a Matt Pat video here, okay? I'm not trying to do that, but I'm just saying it's not out of the question. It's not out of the realm of possibilities is all I'm saying.
Other interpretations. Of course, the White Lady's gift is useless without the other half of the King's Soul. In order to reach it, however, the knight must travel to the White Palace, locked inside the body of a king's mold. In order to bypass the seal, the knight must use a fully awakened dream nail. It can do this by bringing 1800 essence to the seer, allowing her to sharpen the weapon's blade. If the knight does this, the seer remarks that the knight truly is the wielder that her tribe has been dreaming of. There's no explicit reason why the Moth tribe was dreaming about this supposed wielder so much, but it seems like they believe the wielder would wash away the crimes the Moth tribe committed by turning their backs on the Radiants.
Okay.
The seer seems to know that the knight might kill the Radiants, and she seems accepting of it, ready for her and her tribe to disappear and be forgotten forever. With the awoken dream nail in hand, the knight can travel to the Pale King's—
Why would the Moths be upset about turning their backs on the Radiance if the Radiance is clearly... Guys, I know you keep saying that nobody's evil, or not. I will say I've read a select few messages saying that no one is evil in this case, but it certainly sounds like the Radiance is the bad quote unquote guy here, right? It sounds like that's what it sounds like. It just sounds like Hallowness is like a place that was made by the Pale King, and it's just trying to exist, and the Radiance is trying to corrupt it and infect it and yada yada, right? That's what it sounds like. To me, it sounds like the Radiance is the bad character in this story.
Refuge, and locate the other half of the King's Soul charm. When equipped, the King's Soul provides a never-ending supply of soul, making it almost useful if it weren't for the insanely high cost of the charm, and the painfully slow rate at which it increases, and the fact that the charm will get replaced in about 5 minutes after you get it. The King's Soul charm itself symbolizes the union between two higher beings. To me, this implies that the King's Soul is a representation of a vessel, which also was created by the union of two higher beings. With the King's Soul in their inventory, the knight now gains access to an area in the abyss called the Birthplace. In this massive pile of vessel shells, the knight can find a giant egg. Dream nailing the egg allows the knight to access its own memory when it was cast down into the abyss. From viewing that memory, the King's Soul charm is replaced with the Void Heart charm. The recollection of this event allows the knight to come to terms with the void inside itself. Once the knight has the Void Heart, the shades in the abyss no longer attack it, and that strange creature that gives the knight the Shade Cloak calls it the Lord of Shades. In other words, the knight has now bound the once fragmented void under its own will, allowing it to control the void in a powerful new way.
I think I'm almost positive that I actually, with the Void charm, I went back to that thing with the thing that was holding the bowl, and I'm pretty sure I remember thinking that dialogue was repeated. But now I realize it definitely wasn't.
With the union of the Void, the Pale King, and the White Lady, the knight has gained a strength before unseen. It is with this charm that 2 additional endings become unlocked. Hornet will now be standing outside of the Black Egg, offering to help the knight should the opportunity arrive.
Okay.
Midway through the fight with the Hollow Knight, Hornet rushes into battle, subduing the Hollow Knight and piercing its shell. It's at this point that the knight is given the perfect opportunity to enter into the mind of its sibling, fighting the source of the infection head on, and finally putting an end to the Radiance's tyranny. Or I can just stand there and let Hornet get knocked unconscious. If the knight finishes off the Hollow Knight as usual,
Man, I wonder who, anybody that did that, anyone that did that is surely an imbecile. Anybody that would do that is surely an idiot. Champion of Fools would never do something like that, let me tell you.
Sibling ending occurs. Basically, it's the same as the Hollow Knight ending, but now Hornet is in the room too.
and then I specifically said to him, I remember going on a rant. I was like, bro, the only thing that changes is just Hornet's there. I think I said Hadida. Hadida's just dead bodies in the cutscene. That's the only thing that changes. This is terrible. I didn't even notice the essence coming out of the Hollow Knight's head.
Her face appears on the door of the black egg. It's not clear what exactly this means for Hallownest. This might imply that Hornet is now a dreamer, but she's inside the temple, meaning that no one can actually get in there to kill her should the knight ever start leaking infection. At the same time, Hornet mentions that the bindings of the black egg would drain her, so she's probably just going to die anyway, right? Generally, people consider this to be one of the worst endings, but it's worth pointing out that Team Cherry doesn't support any one ending as being the true ending. Each ending is canonical in its own right, and honestly, this ending isn't the worst. At least the knight and Hornet will get to spend some quality time together. If the knight does dream of the Hollow Knight, it will be taken to an arena where it can finally fight the Radiants head-on. But the knight isn't alone, as the other shades from the Abyss will appear
look
in
how
order to
slow
help
that
corner
is.
the Radiants. Eventually, the Radiants gets trapped in the
Bro,
tendrils of
is that the regular base fight? Look how slow this is.
In order to help corner the Radiants.
You could take a nap in between those beams. You could literally take a nap in between those beams. Are you joking?
Eventually, the Radiance gets trapped in the tendrils of the Void. The knight bitch slaps her a couple times, and then the Radiance is consumed into the darkness. The black egg then appears to turn to shadows, and the Void seeps down into the ground. Hornet awakens to find the knight's broken shell lying on the floor. We get one final shot of the shades in the Abyss going to rest, and the game is over. This ending is called the Dream No More ending. The Radiance is gone, and Hallownest is finally free from her infection. Now I think it's fair to ask a few questions about how the Dream No More ending comes about. When the Hollow Knight was initially chosen to become
now hang on. So he just said something along the lines of, Scrimbio slaps Radiance a couple times and kills Radiance, right? Who the hell is this? Is this the Hollow Knight? Is this the Hollow Knight's shade? This is the vessel, the one that we're inside, the Hollow Knight. Yeah, okay.
No More ending comes about. When the Hollow Knight was initially chosen to become
in my opinion, that sounds like the best ending. And that's with him just saying that Team Cherry does not consider any ending the canonical ending. They're all their own path or whatever. That sounds like the best ending to me. Like the best overall ending for Hallownest is that one right there.
The pure vessel, the Abyss was sealed up and the rest of the vessels were left to rot away. But somehow vessels ended up outside of the Abyss, and then one of those vessels was used to replace the Hollow Knight. Exactly how much of this operation was planned, if at all? The White Lady was waiting for a vessel. Did she have any communication with Hornet? Hornet was guarding the Kingsbrand, the only way for a vessel to enter the Abyss. How did she know it was necessary to guard the Kingsbrand from weaker vessels? Hell, if the vessels did escape the Abyss by themselves, wouldn't it be pointless to guard the Kingsbrand, since the vessels could just
Wait a minute, hang on, is that true? Sorry, I just read a chat message saying, yes, the ending is good, but the Hollow Knight dies. Wait a minute. The Hollow Knight... Okay, hang on, guys. I just want to take a second. I want to take a second in kind of like a tribute moment, like an 07 moment. So I'm at 107.05. Okay, watch this. Watch this one more time. Hang on. Okay, look at this. Look at what the Hollow Knight's doing in this cutscene at the very end.
Infection.
Holding Radiance open so that I can strike, right? The Hollow Knight knows that it's about to die, right? It knows that by doing this, holding the Radiance open, letting Scrimbio beat Radiance to death, it's essentially unaliving, right? This is so badass. The Hollow Knight knows that and is still choosing to like sit there and basically help Scrimbio kill Radiance, in turn killing itself. That's so badass. That's actually incredible. Like when you take a second to think about that is incredibly badass. I thought the Hollow Knight and Pure Vessel were like evil, but I feel like I'm having like a newfound appreciation for them. That's so cool.
Pointless to guard the Kingsbrand, since the vessels could just creep back into the abyss the same way? I'm not going to provide any good answers to these questions, because God forbid I answer anything in this entire video. But I do want to point out that no plans to actually produce the Dream No More ending are explicitly stated in-game. So we can only speculate as to whether or not the White Lady or Hornet, or maybe even the Pale King, knew that they could defeat the Radiants by creating a Lord of Shades like the Knight. Regardless, the next two endings were definitely not planned. In fact, the last two endings that were added in the Godmaster update almost feel out of place. The Godseekers basically hijack everything to the point where you don't even have to enter the Temple of the Black Egg to beat the game. That's true. Like beating Mario Bros without ever seeing Bowser.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the Godmaster endings basically reinforce that Hallownest does not exist in a vacuum, which can help the world of Hollow Knight feel more real. Because what else is reality but just a bunch of random chaotic stuff happening all the time?
Okay, hang on. I have two questions. I have a statement and a question. The statement is yes. The endings, like knowing what I know now, the endings of the Godseeker thing just doesn't. It feels just completely like almost random. It's like, oh, let's just do a boss rush and then the game ends. It definitely feels weird. But number two, why did these endings? I'm assuming it'll be answered. Why did the endings from the Godseeker prove that Hallownest does not exist in a void? How does that prove that at all?
The Godseeker in the Junk Pit, it will be able to enter her mind and refight all the bosses in the game.
Oh my God.
This is part of the Godseeker's ritual. They basically attune to the resonance of gods through ritual combat. This allows them to ascend their minds higher, and eventually, through the use of godly focus, achieve communication with the god sleeping in Hallownest's heart, the Radiance. Now I know what you're thinking. That's a pretty convoluted little religious practice they have going on here. What's next? Are they going to start measuring the Knight's Theon levels? It's pretty complicated, but the point is, these Godseekers have some serious capabilities to fuck things up in Hallownest, as we're about to see. As the Knight makes it further and further through the four Pantheons, the Godseekers get closer and closer to making contact with the Radiance, locked away inside the Hollow Knight. At the end of the fourth Pantheon, the Radiance makes herself aware in this strange reunion cutscene between the vessels. But she isn't the only one to make an appearance. The Void itself appears to go on the attack, rising up to meet the Radiance's call. It's at this point that the final challenge, the Pantheon of Hallownest, becomes available. The Godseeker finally acknowledges the Knight as being more than just a simple cringer, and they begin to watch the Knight more intently. After defeating like a bazillion bosses in the final Pantheon, the Knight finally comes face to face with...
Actually 42 to be precise. Or 41 if we're not counting Radiance. Not like I'm keeping count. I'm only the champion of Pantheon 5.
The Absolute Radiance. A stronger, more enhanced version of the game's final boss. Finally, the stage is set. After roughly 40 minutes of intense agony and tedious boss battles, the Knight has finally reached the ultimate enemy responsible for the destruction of Hallownest. Truly, this will be a battle for the ages.
I can't believe I beat this.
But first, let's check in on our old pal Menderbug. As it turns out, he's still alive when the Knight arrives.
Menderbug, baby!
And he's still fulfilling his duty after all this time.
Hello again, diary.
Let's take one last look at his diary.
Please start with that.
My lovely diary.
Okay.
Someone's gone and broke.
That's okay.
My favorite sign, right there at the top of the crossroads, keeps happening.
Bro, something about... Okay, I'm listening to this again. Something about... Hello again, diary. Something about that just hits so hard.
My favorite sign, right there at the top of the crossroads, keeps happening too. But you know, I just can't get mad about it. I should be thanking them, really. More chances to fix that beautiful, complex sign. And I've stocked up on spare parts, so I've no fear it'll ever stay broken for long.
Unfortunately, the only way to ever read the Menderbug's diary is to kill him in cold blood. I'm not sure why Team Cherry thought this was necessary, but the general consensus on Reddit is that they are bloodthirsty warmongers, so it checks out. But at least Menderbug's last moments will be spent fixing one of his favorite signs in the Forgotten Crossroads. It's comforting to think that his final seconds of consciousness were spent in total bliss, before we sent him hurtling into the infinite chasm that is Oblivion.
Did I do that?
Well,
I didn't?
Anyways, the alternate fight between the Knight and the Radiance plays out differently than
those
in
beams
the
are what I'm
vanilla
talking about.
ending. This time around, the Knight is not accompanied by any shades. Instead, after defeating the Radiance, the Knight seems to transform into this monstrosity. Now this creature goes by many names. the God of Gods, the Lord Shade, the Devourer, the Void Entity. But I don't really like any of those, so I will just call him Bill.
Scrimbio.
Bill proceeds to completely annihilate the
No, I will just call him Scrimbio.
Radiance in spectacular fashion. We are then treated to the Embrace the Void ending. Bill comes back down from the sky, dropping into the rest of Godhome. The Godseeker starts to get pulled.
Okay, I didn't piece that together. I did not piece together that was the same shade that that Scrimbio turned into. I did not piece together that I was the thing doing this. I didn't piece that together.
Into Bill by Void tendrils. We then cut to the Godseeker in the junk pit. Void starts leaking out of her eyes, and it appears as though Bill is making an escape back into the real world, which is probably a bad thing? Finally, we see Hornet standing outside of the black egg as the infection begins to disappear from nearby vines. Hornet hears footsteps coming from inside the black egg as the Hollow Knight reveals itself to her and the two prepare for combat. So from this cutscene, we can see that the Radiance's death in Godhome actually did kill her for real, meaning that the infection over Hallownest is now gone. This means the seals inside of the black egg probably wore off, allowing the Hollow Knight to escape its prison. In other words, the Embrace the Void ending is a goddamn cliffhanger, and we have no idea how Team Cherry plans to follow this up.
No, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. What? Why would Scrimbio turning into that black shade, the God of Gods or whatever? Why would Scrimbio suddenly be evil? Number one, why would Scrimbio suddenly be evil? And number two, why is the Hollow Knight fighting Hornet then? That doesn't make any sense. I was following everything up until then. Why does the Radiant's death make the Hollow Knight want to fight Hornet, number one, and then make Scrimbio want to be evil now or some crap? Because you killed Radiance. Yeah, who knows? Oh, never mind, I get it. My brain is big. We don't know if they're fighting. Okay. Hollow Knight probably went a little mad being locked up all those years in Void is evil. But I thought he didn't have any free will. I thought the Hollow Knight didn't have any free will. The Hollow Knight was thought to kill. We do not know normal siblings' behavior. Hornet simply braces for combat because she assumes the Hollow Knight is still infected. Okay. Okay, from the answers that I'm getting, I'm collecting that no one really knows. That's what I'm collecting. I'm collecting there is no right answer to that.
The Hollow Knight is running loose in Hallownest, and the Knight has transformed into a raging void monster that might try to destroy the entire kingdom, or at least what's left of it. What's even more strange about this ending is that the announced sequel, Hollow Knight Silksong, doesn't seem to be related to this ending at all.
He did have a will.
But that's a whole different shit show. Obviously,
sorry, I gotta hear that again.
What's even more strange
so the
about
Hollow Knight
this
did have a
ending
will.
is that
Got it. Okay.
The announced sequel, Hollow Knight Silksong, doesn't seem to be related to this ending at all. But that's a whole different shit show.
I haven't seen this.
Obviously, the biggest mystery surrounding this ending is the appearance of Bill. Did this creature exist in the void already? Or was it somehow willed into existence by the power of the Godseekers? Did the Knight turn into this thing, or did it just become a part of it? Examining a statue of this creature and other forms of the Knight grant the player a Hunter's Journal entry for an ancient artifact called the Void Idol, which might imply this creature might have been worshipped by the ancient civilization. But again, that's pure speculation. We don't know what this worship of Void
Sorry,
exactly.
I'd like to read that. I'd like to read
That's pure
this.
speculation.
Inspired or mad, those ancient bugs, they devoted their worship to no lord or power or strength, but to the very darkness itself. Lem, rare artifact from a time before Hallownest. It inspires, twined in a unified form, contains a large amount of liquid from the abyss, perfectly still.
We don't know what this worship of Void exactly looked like. Maybe the Void they worshipped took the form of something more sinister. There is one thing we know about this monster though. It's weak to flowers. Yes, these things. As it turns out, those delicate flowers that Zamir has stockpiled up her ass are actually useful for something. They contain a strange power that even deters the White Lady from touching one. The Godseeker, however, is dumb enough to accept a flower from the Knight. If the player does this, instead of Void being released out into the world, this flower pulls a no you, and the Godseeker and Void disappear into thin air. The flower itself is described as giving off a pale light, which appears to connect it to the pale beings. Like I said before, pale beings appear to be some form of top-tier gods. As of right now, we are only aware of two, the Pale King and the White Lady, but the fact that Zamir brought these pale flowers from a faraway land implies that there are definitely more of them out there. Another small hint of the existence of pale beings are the pale ore items that can be found all over Hallownest. Did these come from the Pale King, or possibly some other pale being?
Oh, yeah.
And what
okay.
exactly are they? Are they poop? In general, the Godmaster endings appear to be doing a lot of stuff for future.
I thought he was gonna say, are they this? Are they that? Are they like? I thought he was gonna give several examples, but he just said, "Are they poop?" That's it. That's the only. He gave one example. He sat there and thought of one possible thing, and that's the only thing he said.
Hollow Knight content. Like I said before, Hollow Knight Silksong doesn't seem to connect these events on the surface, so we are in a bit of a bind when trying to discuss what these endings actually mean for the greater narrative Team Cherry is building. There's definitely a lot more to consider about what the Pale Beings are and what properties they possess, and we also have plenty of questions surrounding the Void and how bugs have interacted with it in the past. It almost feels like we are looking through a keyhole, trying to grasp onto the totality of Team Cherry's creation. How powerful are creatures like Bill and the worms? Where did things like the Void even come from to begin with? How much bigger is the world beyond Hallownest? Is Bardoon into butt stuff? But of course, that's the appeal of a game like Hollow Knight. Having all of the answers to—
What was that? What was this thing? Did we see this?
How much bigger is the world beyond Hallownest? Is Bardoon into butt stuff? But of course, that's the appeal of a game like Hollow Knight. Having all of the answers to every question would just ruin the mystery of the world.
I don't quite remember exactly who Bardoon is, but now I am wondering, is Bardoon into chimp stuff?
Plus, if we didn't have questions like this to waste our time on, then what else would we be doing with our lives? Go outside? Ugh. And so this video comes to an end. Now I know the average attention span of a YouTube viewer is 9 minutes, so let me leave you with a few takeaways.
But actually, wait, hang on. Before we hear the takeaways, that is true. My #1 most watched video on my channel is the Sans video. And that it was, I don't know, like last time I checked, it was like 700,000 views or some crap. And the average view duration on that is like 8.5 minutes. So that's 100% true.
Hollow Knight is a game about bugs. I know this may come as a shock, but it's true. Watch the video again, and this time, pay attention. You'll notice right away, I promise. 2.
What did he say?
This may come as 1. Hollow Knight is a game about bugs. I know this may— pay attention. You'll notice right away,
okay.
I promise. 2. Murdering your own babies might not be such a good idea after all. I mean, this is obviously just my interpretation of the game's lore. Other people might have different views on the subject of murdering babies, and every opinion is valid, so I don't want to step on anyone's toes or anything.
Now, allow me to reiterate a quote he just said. Every opinion is valid. Now, while I don't necessarily support murdering babies, I do definitely support child labor. Let it be known. The child has brought me through some tough times, let me tell you.
3. Menderbug is fucking dead. 4.
Not in my playthrough.
Nothing is certain. This video probably has a few flaws in it. Trying to construct a cohesive narrative with the information found in Hollow Knight isn't exactly straightforward. I'm sure my views will change in the future, and I encourage you to explore the lore yourself. 5. And this last point is fairly obvious, but I should mention it anyway. Cory in the House is the best anime.
Cory in the house. Yeah, it's a party every week, baby. Cory, check it out. That's right, I'm in the house. He's gonna shake it up and change it. Shake it up. Take it all and rearrange it. Just a little bit. Got a new play on the sand. We've got Cory in the house. Party. Cory in the
Nice, yeah, that was a great video. That was a great video. So here's what I will say. Here's what I will say to you guys. If you haven't seen this yet, if you haven't seen this video, it really helps YouTubers and content creators to— I know this has 10 million views, so I'm positive this guy doesn't need it. But like if you just go click on this video and just leave it open like in a separate tab and just let it play, it's like super helpful. So if you haven't seen it yet, and you want to do that, please do it because it's super helpful. But yeah, this was a great video. I'm really happy you guys recommended this because this was a ton of fun. I thought it was it certainly answered a lot of questions for sure. Check out the Silksong trailers, plural. Okay, hang on one sec. All right, here we go. Let's do it. I wonder who those little guys are. We know who that is, obviously. Yeah, so we're playing as Hornet, aka Hadida. New enemies. That's cool. New area, new enemies. New abilities. Haircut man. Wait, hang on. I gotta see that again. Bro, these enemies. Hang on. These enemies look sick. Haircut enemies. It reminds me of Gwen, if anyone knows of League of Legends characters. And this, and whatever the hell this is, that looks... Oh, it's also scissors, too. Whatever the hell that is looks pretty cool. It reminds me of, like, a Deep Nest character mixed with scissors. Oh, wow. That's like Hollow Knight combines with, what do you call it? God of War? With the giant, like the enormous bosses. That's pretty cool. By the way, I have a theory. I'm going to call it right now. You ready for this? My theory is this is the Zote equivalent in this game. That's my theory. It's either going to be the Zote equivalent or some sort of Tower of Love equivalent. Wait, I missed something. I already love this lady. This one with the little ding ding ding. I already love this lady. A ping ping ping. That's really cool. I wonder if that's the stag equivalent. Hey, we've seen somebody similar to that. Hang on, we've seen somebody they're right here. We've seen someone that this person gave us power or something like that. A spell. Or they look like it. Mossberry Brew! Mossy Berry Brew. Hold up. Mossberry Brew. Hang on one sec. Madness of the Pilgrims. Wait, let me read this real quick. Madness of the Pilgrims. My family curse has struck again. Strange singing pilgrims have surrounded my old home, violently attacking me whenever I approach. Please let this plague be lifted. That's so cool. So this has to be the Nailmaster equivalent. These... Look at look how giant this person is, and look how tiny the little utensils that they're using is, the little tools. I like that. This forge area looks sick, by the way. Wait, one sec. I have to read that. Hang on. Pimpillo. Explodes on impact or when ignited by its fuse, dangerous to friends and foes alike. Pimpillo. Huh. So, children! Did you see that? More children to deal with, yes, of course. The child labor never ends. Look at them. I can't wait to put them to work, let me tell you that. I can't wait to put the children to work. Oh my god. That looks cool. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. Yeah, okay, listen, here's what I will say. I can see why you guys are anticipating this. that definitely looks super cool. All right, so I'll look up there's one more that I saw is like a minute or something like that, minute and 20 seconds. There's one more that's showcased in 2020. So we'll watch this one. And I think that'll probably be it for today's stream. 2 hours stream. Oh my, bro. Okay, never mind. I just saw who sent the message. Never mind. Never mind. 2 hour stream. This guy's really losing it. Fight for the fate of the haunted land. That's a new dash then. A new dash mechanic. The saw. Oh, the saws. Put me back on the saws. I see grandmother has had a. I see grandmother has had some participation in the making of this game. Oh, an upsend spell. Oh, great! They brought the elevators back. Ha 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 ha. Great. Wait, does this not... Hang on one second. Does this not look... Oh, no, it's definitely different. I was going to say, you remember where I lost like 2,000 Geo or something like that? Back when, like, in my second stream of the game? This looks... I thought it looked like that, but it's different. These guys, by the way, these enemies, this has the same... Like, it's the same insect as a Bopinata lady, I think. So, I think we're probably still in the same... area. I mean, somewhat in the same area. Close to Hallownest, let's say. This looks so cool. These areas look so amazing. What is this, Celeste? What are we playing, Celeste? With the rising lava? Oh, you can do a Hagale. You can do a Hagale. I don't know why I think you didn't think you'd be able to. Nice.
Play it.
Awesome. Awesome. A drill net? Is that what it's called? Guys, just come on. Come on. Do we really have to actually that? It's a Hagale. Everybody knows it's a Hagale. You can Adida, Hagale, and Shaw. W. I'll see you guys in 10 years. Guys, listen. This is all I have to say. Silksong's coming out this year in 2025. And by the way, that's not even Copium. 100% Silksong coming out in 2025. And Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4. And you know what? Actually, you know what? I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it because some people are too scared to. I'm going to say it. And Deltarune Chapter 5, 6, and 7, by the way. All 2025. And take that to the bank, by the way.